talking about being involved in a political idea, some things that you think are really important, a movement, and just getting fucking burnt on it, totally cynical about it. Talk about that a little bit, and then how you moved through that to be able to focus on what you're doing now.
I mean, I think coming into a movement and then immediately saying a lot of people get really harsh prison sentences, had an effect. It had an effect not just on me, but like on a movement writ large. Where people were afraid to sort of come out. And the work isn't actually fun or glamorous. It's actually like really hard work. Um, and it involves like a lot of like interesting like social relationships, especially like when you're in a small town. And you don't, it's not like you're in Philadelphia where there's a ton of vegans on the East Coast, or like Portland, Oregon, or like doing activism in like a small, especially southern town, in the Bush years, was a very isolating and sort of like lonely experience. But it was also the sort of that time in my life, where you start challenging kind of like your youthful optimism and ideas, and trying to figure out like what am I going to do with my life? Like maybe my friends aren't going to save the world. Now what? So I think it was just sort of a combination of all those things. Maybe even with sort of well, I finished college. What do I do with my life now? That put sort of a more cynical or negative view on the world. And I'm constantly fighting that. I'm constantly fighting cynicism. Especially my career as a public defender did not make me less cynical, or more optimistic. Um, Certainly there are moments, but I often sort of find myself sort of fighting this like nihilistic cynicism versus optimism. And I think you just have to sort of like look for it, like look for the opportunities and understand like the world is not designed to make you feel optimistic about social progress. And if you want to feel optimistic, you have to seek it out or make it happen. And I think that's an incredibly cynical worldview as it is, but that's sort of like how it's worked for me.
Yeah. Do you mind if I give you a kind of a personal take on that?
Yeah, yeah.
I came up in punk and hardcore just like you did, like found like animal rights activism and those types of things. Same way, for me it was youth of today, the earth crisis. And and then also I was like heavily into like ebullition record stuff as well in the 90s, like really, really inspired by that. And still like really inspired by a lot of those like early ebullition releases. Shout out Kent. You were a game changer in your own way. Um, but I remember getting super involved in like politics when I was young, like, early college years. And that's where cynicism started to really kick in for me because a lot of the same I found people, myself included, wasting a ton of time arguing about stupid shit that didn't make a difference. And like weird social politics where it's like it seems like you're doing something, but you're just really going at all your peers and the group that, you're going at the other group of punks in town or you're beefing about these things. And I just was like, well, this is stupid. This is like a total waste of time. This is all I'm doing right now. This is our version of a bar fight that my kids my same age are now doing at bars. Like it's the exact same thing, but we're wrapped in politics. I got really, really burnt out on it. And I was still like into all of the ideas, into all the politics, but I got really like, I don't want to talk about politics with punks anymore. Like I'm totally done with this. But I went in professionally, I went in to start working as a therapist and I was doing a lot of like street level work with like street and trench youth and all of that. Totally was like, this is where my politics, this is how I do my politics. And then I noticed something. It was the same thing, the same like kind of infighting, one agency fighting another agency. We're all fighting for funding. This person's full of shit. No, you're full of shit. And I was like, oh, this is just exactly like the two punk houses that are 3 blocks away fighting with each other. This fucking sucks. I hate this. And again, I got like really burnt, super, super burnt out on it. And I never got burnt out on doing addiction and mental health work. I loved the work with clients, but I hated dealing with the system. Couldn't stand it. I just got fed up. And that's what really got me interested in like leadership, concepts of leadership, like all of those things. And something that I really stuck with is that people are going to people, and people are going to be people in like shitty endeavors, but also like super cool endeavors. People just act like people in all sorts of situations. And it is really about having the right kind of mindset, like seeking out optimism, like finding the right people to work with, creating the right working conditions. That's how you can keep that optimistic space. And maybe also I'm just like a cynical person myself, but like I could be in any situation and feel like people are going to create a weird pyrodynamic bullshit thing unless I keep myself in check, they keep themselves in check, and we intentionally create the right kinds of working conditions to do good things.
Yeah, I mean, because the task at hand on a lot of these projects are monumental that people have been struggling to achieve for decades, centuries, lifetimes. Um, and I think I sort of take on the mindset of, well, if you expect things are going to go bad, when they go well, it's going to be twice as nice. Um, but I sort of just kind of found my lane in terms of like, here's how I can help a cause I really care about. And I'm just going to focus on that. And trust the organizers, trust the activist. But like this is the role that like I want to do. This is the skill that I can sort of provide to something that I care about. And that might not be sufficient, but it's where I'm at right now. It's better than me going to do like contract law for some corporation or something like that. And so I sort of feel like this is how I can contribute in the best way possible.
So tell us about your time as a public defender. Like, how did you find that work, and what are some of the things that you think are important for people to understand about that?
Well, I was originally kind of drawn to it just inherently, thinking of public defender's job is to go battle authority every day. Like that really wasn't aligned with my personality and politics. So it really just felt like a good fit. But is my first year in law school where I read the new Jim Crow, which really talks about how racism really has perpetuated itself through the criminal justice system, which was like a concept like I already knew about, but it just really laid it out in a really digestible way in terms of here are all the ways the criminal justice system does that. And I went into wanting to be a public defender with this naive, idealistic view that like I am going to fight against the new Jim Crow and cause all this sort of change. And really that's not the case being a PD. Sometimes you can do things that make huge systemic changes, but really what you end up doing is you're just helping individual people. And it was that first experience, my first summer as an intern at the public defender's office in Denver, that allowed me to sort of have that shift is, this isn't about being like the one person that takes down this like terrible system. No, the role is there's someone who needs your help, who's perhaps experiencing one of the worst times of their lives. And you're there to help them, and there's no one else there. And that just felt really powerful to me, to be able to sort of insert myself in that situation or be inserted into that situation because obviously like you don't get to pick your public defender, and actually like help someone's life, and that could be obviously getting them an acquittal in the case, but that could simply just be standing up next to them and being like, no, this is a good person, um you know and what he or she has been accused of doing does not reflect who they are as a person, um, and trying to seek out those sort of individual relationships, and it really taught me a lot about people.